Good morning. Hey, Dr. Functional, how you doing today? Yeah, stew day. That means it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and maybe you got some meat in there and some potatoes, some carrots, some celery, some onion. It's just a little bit of everything in a whole. Just not just no one thing. So it's just a stew, and maybe some gravy. Morning, Neil. So yeah, it's a stew day. It, it could be just about anything. Of course, there's always the my uh, basic meal parts that go into a stew. Congressional hearings, House members or Senate members talking to people who are in charge or want to be in charge of us and getting them to answer questions. Oh, I just made some Irish stew here, about 2 months ago. And I've got some I have, whenever I make stews or anything like that, I always make about 6 quarts worth. And that way I've got plenty to go into the freezer. Because, making stews it can be time consuming depending on how you make them and what you make them with. So I do it in a way that I can, or do so much that I can put some in the freezer and not worry about it for the next time I want it. Just pull it out, let it thaw. Put in a vat of hot water, let it thaw out, and then warm it back up, and there's my stew. Well, good morning, ramen. Well, let's see. Considering, and since let's see, when I got to bed last night, it was it was 10 o'clock. So let's see here, 24 and let's see, 24 and 6 is 30 and 10. I'd been up about 40 hours when I fell asleep last night. And I got 4.5 hours of sleep before I got back up again. Dog decided he wanted me up. And I was up for about 3 hours. Then I took about an hour's nap, and then I gotten up, and I've been up since, and I'm on my eighth or ninth cup of coffee. So, yep, yeah, I definitely believe in freezing. If I'm taking something that I can freeze and I'm going to be making it, and if it's a time-consuming meal to make, like a good stew or a really good tomato soup or marinara sauce or something like that, then yeah, I always make a lot extra and freeze it because it definitely saves on time later for when I want it. Um, I keep a whiteboard on my freezer, and everything that's in my freezer is listed on that whiteboard, and even as to the date that I put it in. That way, every now and again, the wife and I will go out there and look at the whiteboard. Oh man, that's been in there now for 8 months, 9 months. Maybe we need to consider pulling it out and eating it. So that way, it's not sitting there. Nothing stays in the freezer forever and gets forgotten about. Because that's important that you don't forget about forgotten foods, because that can um, that can get come on, fingers type. Okay. And here is a video that I wanted to that I thought I wanted to show, and it's going to be great. All right. Anyway, well, let's start with this one here. Now, this young lady, I know I this is a Prager video, and I'm not a I don't watch a lot of Prager View videos. So we'll watch this one here real quick because I saw it by accident this morning. Hey, Data Wasteland, how you doing this morning? I saw this in this morning, and I actually had to sit back and laugh at it a little bit. And let's see here. Oh, there it is up there at the top. Okay.
Conservative, I really think you forget that you're half Black.
This is so abundantly true, right? I wake up in the morning every day and I go look in the mirror and I go,
Completely understand that sometimes how you're raised is what you project into your adult life.
Little do they know that the white person that raised me is a very dedicated leftist.
But baby, I can dissect and debunk 90% of your I just need you to remember that when you leave the comfort of TikTok, your family, and your geographical location, how does society see you?
Now she says, honey, I could debunk most of your then do it. Then make the video of you debunking the things that I'm saying, rather than talking about my skin color or how I'm perceived by the world. A lot of left-leaning people, one of the primary hate comments that I'll get is, you're always going to be Black. They're always going to see you as a Negro. No, that's interesting. Why are you so keen on relegating somebody to a specific box? I'd love a detailed video on what it means to be Black. And then we'll watch that video and we'll see how racist it sounds.
Miss Half Black Conservative, I really
Okay. It's a short video, but it brings up one of the issues I think we've got in this country, and when it comes to dealing with race. People expect people to act a certain way depending on their race. All right. How many times do we hear all white people are racist? Or all Black people will do this? All Black people need to vote Democrats. If you don't vote Democrat, you've left the plantation. You're voting against your own best interest. All Mexicans, need to do this. All this, all that. All Cubans need to do that or do this. Now, I do, working in a hotel, I see a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. And one of the things I've found is when people come walking in the door, I can sometimes tell how I want to treat them, how I want to react to them, or how I want to say things to them, depending on how they walk in the door. All right. I get somebody coming in, get a guy come walking in, and he's got the gold grill in. He's got all the chains on. His pants is sagging. He's wearing blue or red underwear. I know first thing is I'm usually going to have a hard time understanding what he's asking for. So I'm going to have to really listen hard because that grill really impedes the language. And usually after the first, good morning, how you doing today? Or how can I help you, whatever. And you get that kind of a response. It's like, oh God, okay. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. But I get somebody come walking in and they're dressed the same way. I said, good morning. How are you? And I get back a good morning. I'm doing great. And I'm looking for a room. Okay, I know that it's going to be a totally different reaction. I get somebody coming in and they are just dragging ass tired. I don't care what color they are. All I know just by the way they walk in the door that they're going to want, they don't want any of the BS. They want absolute minimal conversation so they can get in, get down to their room, and get to bed. They've had a long, rough day, and I don't care what day of the time it is. No, I'm not talking about roots. And Roots is interesting in and of himself. Okay. Um, so yeah, that's gonna be something fun. But the question that this young lady brought up was the person who is responding to her knows her, knows her videos, knows what she says every day. And she comes back with this comment, you forget that you're black or that you're half black. And that people, no matter where you're at, are going to treat you a certain way because of your skin color. And I personally, I find that the only people who are going to treat someone a certain way based on their skin color is going to be the racist. To one, and to whatever extent they may be a racist. But that's how they're going to get treated. That's who's going to treat them based on their skin color. And if you demand that you have somebody else act upon what your perception is of how they should act based upon their skin color, that's making you the racist. Hey, morning, Badger. You let people act the way they want to act, and then you judge them accordingly to how they act. And that that's you know while I was in the service, I worked with white, black, American Indian, Indian, the South, Middle Eastern Indian. I worked with um, Hispanic. I worked with, I mean, male, female, short, fat, tall, skinny, uh, lazy, ambitious, people who are in the military simply to play sports, brown nosers. And I hope everybody's old enough to know what a brown noser is. That's somebody whose nose is so far up their superior's ass is turned brown. Yeah, Eagle, that's the way I feel about it too. And why in the hell have I not? No, that's not the way that works. So I need to come over here. But you're right. If you have to explain that to someone, then that person is lost. And there's no reason. Okay, there we go. All right. And they're the ones that scare me. In this day and age, they're the ones that scare me, especially when they are the people who claim that I'm a racist because of my skin color. Not because of the way I treat people. but because of my skin color, I'm automatically a racist. So, yeah, that's always surprised me. Oh, okay. Huh, interesting. I just noticed something on one of my walls. I had to go over and take a look at it. Oh, speaking of something, I tried, like I tell you, said today's a stew day. I had to stop in at a convenience store the other day, and I needed to get some gas because I forgot to go to my normal gas station. And while I was in there, they had some fresh chicken wings, which really smelled good. So I went ahead and got a half a dozen wings at $1.50 a wing, and went back to grab a pop to drink with it, and they had Pepsi Nitro. Have y'all seen this Pepsi Nitro? Okay, here we go. And I'm getting ready to share it here. As soon as I find it, there we go. Now, I used to drink a lot of Pepsi. Come on, there. Pepsi used to be my pop of choice. Oh yeah, the infamous brown. I don't know if it's an energy drink or not, but I bought one and then I turned around and didn't have a chance to drink it. So I drank it last night. My wife wasn't feeling well, so she was sleeping on the couch, and so I just went ahead and made me a sandwich, and drank this to go with that sandwich. No, I don't think it didn't taste like a beer. It tasted more almost like a cream ale, or almost like a cream drink, not a cream ale, but a cream. And I was amazingly surprised how good it was. I mean, like I said, I quit drinking Pepsi years ago because I started drinking diet soda. Okay, is that what it is, that dog? And then, being a draft cola, I was just, I was surprised. One, it was very good. It was very smooth. Um, and it had a mouth feel that that I've never gotten out of anything except a cream soda before. Yeah, Badger. I mean, that's why I quit drinking Pepsi. That and the fact I was drinking a half a case a week. I mean, I didn't drink any water whatsoever. I just drank Pepsi. So I cut all sodas, all pops out of my diet for about a year. And about a year and a half ago, I brought Diet Dr. Pepper because it was the only diet drink that didn't have a lot of sugar in it, and that tasted halfway decent. So, I mean, it's zero carbs, zero fats, zero calories. The only thing bad about it is the salt, the sodium content. It's kind of heavy on the sodium content. And I've got a lot more belly. Um, especially I I gained back some of the weight, quite a bit of the weight that I'd lost, about a third of it. And after they put me on the steroids, and I'm just now getting that back under control. So, but yeah, I mean they're not. It's if you like a cream soda, that Nitro Pepsi uh, was I was surprised how good that was, to be honest. And let me stop sharing that. And my son works for Pepsi, so I'm surprised he didn't bring me one because he usually brings me when they have a new pop out. He usually brings me one so I can try it. Oh, what's this? Oh, here is an interesting piece of news I found this morning. Now I've never heard of this guy. Ex Fugees rapper Pras Michael, who funneled $800,000 to Obama's campaign in 2012, found guilty and schemed to help China influence U.S. government. And this is out of Today News Africa. Here's this guy here, evidently. I'm going to assume that's him. Grammy Award-winning Fugees rapper Pras Michael was found guilty on Wednesday of 10 criminal counts related to an international conspiracy aimed at influencing the U.S. government. Faced multiple counts over a failed conspiracy to help Malaysian businessman Zhou Lo and the Chinese government gain access to U.S. officials, including former Presidents Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Michael was found guilty of conspiracy to defraud the U.S., witness tampering, and acting as an unregistered agent of a foreign government. He faces 20 years in prison. He's reported to have funneled over 800,000 of 20 million paid by Lowe in 2012 to Obama's campaign through a number of straw donors. Michael testified he never used money at Lowe's direction, but instead saw it as his money, which he could spend however he wanted. I could have bought 12 elephants with it. $20 million? Yeah, you could have bought more than 12 elephants. Oh, Eagle, yeah, Arizona Arnold Palmer. I like that. I do like that drink, but man, I can't drink it. It's got, if I remember right, it's got lots of sugar in that. Prosecutors allege Lowe directed over $100 million to help Michael push the government, including Trump, to drop its investigations into Lowe. Michael also testified that he only helped Lowe find an attorney in the U.S. and only told authorities about Chinese dissident Guo Wengi because he thought he was a criminal. However, prosecutors alleged Michael advocated for the extradition of Wengi on behalf of the Chinese government. The former Fugees member also said the $100 million was for media business he was starting, and the investment wasn't from Lowe. $100 million as a business startup? $100 million? That's $100 million is a lot of money to invest into a business startup. Without having any control over how that money's going. So, of course, his lawyer said he's going to appeal the case. This isn't over yet. No sentencing has been set yet. The field conspiracy to influence the U.S. government, which Michael was found guilty of, reached the highest levels. The guilty verdict sent shockwaves across the country, many questioning the extent to which foreign governments have influenced U.S. politics in recent years. So, yeah, that's something. If you have somebody giving you $100 million to send over to the U.S. to buy elections, to donate in elections, you are trying to buy influence. Exactly, Sean. Exactly. If you want to buy an election, there's the bet. You want to start a business up, and oh no, did I lose it? No, that's not it. That's not it. I don't want to get to these yet. Ah, here we go. Here we go. Remember I showed you all the video the other day. Here's a follow-up video to one that I showed you yesterday. Okay, here we go.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez, welcome and thank you for coming today.
Now, this is a hearing on the exploitation of unaccompanied alien children, illegal immigrants, how the children are being they're being treated.
To testify. Ms. Rodriguez, were you at the Capitol on January 6th?
Was I at
Oh, the guy's answering is Swallow. The guy asking these questions.
the Capitol?
Yes.
No, sir. I was on the premises outside of a reflection pond waving a flag.
So you were on the Capitol grounds?
I'm not sure if that's technically Capitol grounds. I was near the street.
Is this your tweet right behind me at 3:05 on January 6th, 2021?
I really do not know.
Are you at Secure Border TX?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see that picture?
I can.
Did you go any farther than where you were in that picture?
No, sir.
Did you ever cross any police barricades on January 6th?
Not that I'm aware of.
Can somebody explain to me exactly what these questions have to do with children being exploited when they're brought across the border illegally? Oh, did you, Eagle? Can anybody explain to me how this relates to the exploitation of children? This usually the sexual exploitation of children.
Did you ever see any violence on January 6th?
No, I did not. I did see a red flare go up. I don't remember the time, but that was about it. I did not encounter any violence. As a matter of fact, it was quite peaceful. I was involved in some prayers the day before.
So January 6th, over 150 officers were injured, one lost an eye, one lost a finger, one lost a life, but you didn't see any violence.
No, sir, I did not. That was not my experience.
You agree, though, that violence against police officers took place that day?
Sir, I'm not quite sure what this has to do with the exploitation of children like the young girl who wore this band.
Sure. I guess, you were called, you publicly tweeted this, the majority knew that you were on the Capitol grounds on January 6th. And so, you're,
Again, what does January 6th have to do with the exploitation of illegal immigrant children? And unfortunately, nobody can stop it, redirect him into the questions that he should be asking. They can't tell him that he has to keep things on subject, because this is his time to question her on whatever he wants to question her. And, there are times where it's appropriate to, when you're questioning a witness before the Congress, as to their background, as to their actions, things that they may have done or may have not done, that directly reflect on why they're there, on the subject matter at hand. But none of this has to do with the exploitation of children. Yeah, she said she didn't see any violence. There's a lot of people there that did not commit any violence. And, this is the first I heard about 150 officers hurt, that an officer lost their finger. And we all know nobody died. The only person that died on January 6th and no officers was Babish, and no officers died as a result of anything going on January 6th. Sean, you're exactly right. Oh, look, a distraction. If they're talking about the exploitation of politics and okay, yeah, you're right about that.
credibility is, just as every witness, including the Democratic witness, is fair grounds for questioning. And so I guess my question is, you are aware that violence took place at the Capitol on January 6th.
That's what the media says.
Okay. Do you believe the media?
My answer there would be
Apparently,
no.
I do
No, about
not.
January 6th.
About January 6th, I can only go by my personal experience. And I absolutely, if waving a flag and praying outside of the Supreme Court and standing outside waving a flag on public property is a crime, I'm not quite, again, I'm really not sure what relevance. We have children that are being raped
But others,
using our taxpayer
others
dollars.
there were
I'm not
waving-
quite sure what this has to do with me waving a flag has to do with.
You were among a crowd that
Mhm.
did commit.
I loved her
violence.
answer there.
And my question for you is, and I accept your word, you did not commit any violence that day. You didn't see any violence that day. Certainly, it's not a lie. It's not made up that 150 officers were injured. But my question is, to your credibility, will you condemn the violence that took place against the officers that day?
I absolutely condemn any violence, including the violence that is occurring at our southern border using our taxpayer dollars. Absolutely.
Okay. And did you tell the majority before they invited you here that you had participated?
Why would she tell anybody before she was invited? I mean, you don't even know the majority is going to invite you until they actually invite you. So why would she go up to them and just randomly send somebody to the Republican Party? Oh, by the way, on January 6th, I was at the reflecting pool waving a flag and praying. Swalwell makes no sense here.
Participated on the Capitol grounds on January 6th.
Did I tell the majority that I
The-
waved a flag on?
Did they know that
Public
you
grounds?
had been at the Capitol on
That
January?
was not a question that I was asked. No, sir.
And as it relates to January 6th, you also posted a tweet that encouraged people to attend that day and quote, fight for Trump. Do you remember writing on January 1, 2021, imagine over 1 million patriots screaming, fight for Trump. Think Congress and the Supreme Court will hear us. When you say fight for Trump and then there was actually fighting, physical fighting on behalf of Trump, what
Sir,
did you mean?
Are you stating that I tweeted that?
You don't remember tweeting?
No, sir, I honestly do not.
Okay, so on January 1, 2021, you sent a tweet that said,
How this reminds me so much of back when Giffords was shot, and all of a sudden, every Republican that had ever said we're targeting this district, you know, they're out there advocating gun violence. They're out there advocating, pushing for somebody to shoot their Democratic opponent. Remember that? And now all of a sudden, a Republican says we need to fight for Trump, and and Swalwell's automatically saying, "Well, you're out there advocating for physical violence." But of course Swalwell ignores the exact same verbiage and worse verbiage coming from people on her own side. Just as the Democrats ignored the target, quote unquote, word target and other terminology and visuals used by the Democrats against Republicans in election season. Exactly, Badger. You're exactly right. And Data, you're right. They're, doing everything, this guy is a scumbag. This guy is a scumbag. He really is. And I mean that in the literal sense of that word.
imagine over 1 million patriots screaming, quote, fight for Trump on the 6th. Think Congress and SC, which I believe is Supreme Court, will hear us then. Hashtag fight for Trump. Your testimony is that you did not say that.
I'm saying I honestly do not remember tweeting that. I was not very active on Twitter.
Will you also,
Swalwell, there's a difference between I don't remember and no, I didn't. You as a Congress critter, I'll be familiar with that because a lot of people say that up there. Hillary Clinton said it a few hundred times. Obama has said it. Well, I'm sure you've said it. Rather than admit to something, you've just said, I don't remember doing that or saying that. So, yeah, I don't remember is the first line of defense for politicians.
tweeted at 4 o'clock, I just got home. You said, I just got whole safely. I think you meant home. At BWI Airport is the gate filled up with those of us with Trump gear on and several Army soldiers.
Stay alert, America. China's 100-year war to defeat the U.S.
Near time to boarding, our gate was surrounded by airport
The gentleman
security.
yield for a moment.
No, I will not yield. So you tweeted regularly throughout the days leading up to January 6th. You asked people to fight for Trump, and then you took a picture of yourself near the Capitol. So I just want to know, when you say fight for Trump,
that's not a picture of her behind you that you just pointed to, dickhead.
and people ultimately fought for Trump. Do you regret those words?
Sir, I do, the second one that you just read, yeah, because that was a very traumatic experience. I couldn't understand why my gate surrounding and in BWI was surrounded by guardsmen, and how we as a whole, everyone that was on that plane, were threatened to be removed. I could not understand because again, I did not experience any type of violence. As far as the first one that I would have to go back and look at that. I really do not honestly remember tweeting
Sure,
that
I'll
first.
make sure we
Gentleman's
give
time
it to
has
you.
expired. Mr.
And
Chairman.
I just want to correct, I said
Okay.
January
Gentleman's
6th for the
time
BWI
has
report. It was January 7th. I just want to,
Okay, fortunately, his time has now expired. And, he did his best to paint her as an extremist. He did his best to, nullify anything and everything she had to say about anything, uh, and on top of this, to paint the Republicans as going to their most extreme followers as witnesses. The people, we're going to find the people who are willing to tear down the Capitol building, and these are their witnesses. How can we trust the Republican Party when they bring these people up here as their witnesses? That's what he's doing. It's not that he does, on top of the fact he's showing he doesn't care about the violence being committed upon these children. Yeah, Badger, you're right about that too. Just point a finger at her and yell witch or shame, shame, shame.
Mr.
January
Nels.
7th was when you tweeted about
Mr.
BWI.
Nels.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Rodriguez, I apologize that you had to, you're here for a hearing on the border. They don't want to talk about a border. Mr. Swalwell is down there. Obviously, everybody knows he's made some comments. He's got a checkered past. He's alleged
I'm sorry,
relationships.
a checkered past. I would ask,
It's my time.
Mr.
Alleged affairs,
Checkered
relationships
past.
with.
No,
with Yum
sir. You
Yum.
don't get to say that.
Oh, yes. Again, I don't know who this guy is. I really wish Forbes wouldn't put this huge banner across the bottom of that like this so that you can't read their names. All right. But I love it. But did you hear Swalwell? You can't say shit like that.
He's alleged
I'm sorry,
relationships.
a checkered past. I would ask,
It's my time.
Mr.
Alleged affairs,
Checkered
relationships
past.
with.
No,
with
sir.
Yum
You
Yum.
don't get to say that shit.
He-
That's not
he had
true.
You don't get, that, you don't get to say that shit. That is now in the congressional record. That is now in the congressional record.
Mr. Swalwell is down there. Obviously, everybody knows he's made some comments. He's got a checkered past. He's alleged
I'm sorry,
relationships.
a checkered past. I would ask,
It's my time.
Mr.
Alleged affairs,
Checkered
relationships
past.
with.
No,
with
sir.
Yum
You
Yum.
don't get to say that shit. That's not
He had
true.
alleged relationships with
And-
Yum Yum.
Yes, the
Now-
gentleman, I asked the gentleman's words to be
no,
taken
You
down.
don't get to say
Mr.
that.
Chairman,
Bob.
Yes, the
we ask that
gentleman's
the
words be
gentleman's
taken down. It's guessing.
All right, now see the Democrats have pulled up this rule. Now this isn't the first time or even the third time that when somebody says something the Democrats don't like, especially at Swallow, that they want their words taken down instead of stricken. And remember, as we covered the other day, when the words are stricken from the record, all that means is, okay, yeah, they're not going to go in the congressional record. But if they say they want the words taken down, then they want that individual, whoever spoke those words, to basically be removed from the hearings, and they can't say anything more during those hearings. So they want to silence permanently, permanently silence for the purpose of that particular hearing anybody that dares say something that offends them.
You slurring another member?
That is-
I am here.
He's making.
I asked.
And is it a slur to say somebody's got a checkered past when they've got a checkered past? Is it a slur when to say that somebody's had an affair with a Chinese spy when they had an affair with a Chinese spy? Is that really a slur?
The
Let's have
words
some
of the
order
gentleman
and
be taken down as
civility.
casting a
Let
slur
us
on another
have-
member.
Let us have some order and civility here, and we will take up the issues one by one.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that the words of the gentleman be taken down as expressing a slur on another member.
I join in that request.
And the specific words were?
You mentioned that Mr. Swalwell had a checkered past. I don't have the rest of the exact words, but it was a direct slur on a member of this committee that.
You know, now that they have, they've made this, the Democrats have made this a precedent. That's the word I'm looking for. It's going to come back and bite them in the ass. It really is, because the Democrats are infamous for their comments about Republicans and what they say during congressional hearings. And this going to come back, and it's, you know, a lot of them are going to get silenced during hearings, especially this woman here. That is one of the let's just say she gives southeastern Indians, you know, a very, very bad name. She's very poor. She very poorly represents the people.
That is not acceptable.
We are going to consult the precedents and take temporary recess.
Thank you.
Now, this recess doesn't last too long.
Yes, and I would like,
Okay.
Would the gentleman wish to withdraw his word?
yes, and I would like to rephrase. This is the same member that was removed from the Intelligence Committee that he previously served on. So now let's get right down to the serious.
So he still manages to get his jab in, but he gets to put into the way, you know, that the Democrats can't oppose. They can oppose it, but they can't object to it too strongly. Yeah, you're right, Neil. That's exactly the way she looked. So I think her name's Prada or Prada, something like that. I don't remember. Praedia, I think, something along those ways. But yeah, she is not a very nice person. She really isn't. Her face, and I normally don't like to refer to somebody's appearance as a negative way, because Lord knows I'm not a good looking man at all. But yeah, her face reflects her personality quite well. It really does. And let's see, what do I have here? No, I'm not going to get into this. I was going to, but I'm not going to today. That's just way too much. Way too much. Yeah, Dana, I think that could have been a way of doing it, but anybody who looks at that will know. Anybody who looks at that and questions why, you know, well, why was he removed? And they look it up. Yeah, everything will come to light. So, but that's how he ought to be referred to from now on. Him and Shift for Brains. Every time anybody talks about either one of them, you know, right after the name, you know, the man who was removed from the Intelligence Committee. You know, just as a reminder, so they're always, they're always reminded uh, what kind of individual they truly are. So that's what I'd love to see myself. But that's me, myself, and I. Okay. Now back to another one of my favorite subjects. All right. They had Dieter Bach at the testifying. And this guy, he knows nothing about guns. He is a bureaucrat, plain and simple. He knows nothing about firearms. I am by no means an expert on firearms. I am by no means an expert. If somebody brings up some guns and I got to say, huh? And I got to get on the internet and look them up. You want to tell me something, I know my guns. I know how to shoot my guns. I know how to care for my guns. I know what I want to do to modify my guns. And that's it. I know my guns that I own and that I have in my house. And that's as far as it goes for the most part. All right. And this guy knows even less than I do. And here we go. But you would think that when you're being called up to testify before the House or the Senate, you wouldn't just show up cold. You would have an idea. You would have an idea of the questions that are going to be asked. You would have papers and such in front of you that you could look down to supply you with answers. You'd be prepared.
The gentleman yields back. Next, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy.
Thank the chairman. Thank you for appearing before the committee. Director, I served in the U.S. Attorney's Office, prosecuted 922G1, 924C, felons in possession and so forth. I would say that, well, let me ask you this question. There are different definitions of mass shootings. We've said that I think 160 or something mass shootings this year or something in that zip code. However you define that.
I believe,
Not necessarily get to the question. In your reporting of that, how many of those shooters can you report were on medication?
I don't know the facts to be able to answer. I'm sorry. Sir.
Okay, I think that's an important thing, and I'd like ATF to get us an answer on the 165.
You would think that with the deep dive that these people do into the mass shooters, especially when they're doing their deep dive into their political affiliations and political beliefs, because they always manage, they always manage to release these quite rapidly when the individual is on the conservative side or indicates anything on the conservative side. That they like Trump, that they like this guy, that, they hate the government. They hate Obama, they hate Biden, something like that. That gets released out. It's when they don't release it that's just as telling. It's when they don't tell you what's going on in the shooter's mind, in this guy's or gal's mind, that they that's just as telling, because when they don't release it, it's because it doesn't fit their narrative. Yeah, they did. I covered that the other day because they said it was too disturbing for the American populace. Really. The only way it can be too disturbing for the American populace is if it doesn't fit your narrative.
mass shootings, how many were on medication? How many were from single parent homes without fathers?
Again, those may not be all ATF investigations, and I don't know the answer to that.
Well, but it's important you guys collect data on virtually everything. I think it's really important for us to know that. Can you tell us how many of the perpetrators were, for example, involved in social media and certain websites, or how many of them had dropped out of school?
Again, I don't have a number on that. I would agree with you that those are all significant problems that we have to address as a society.
Well, I think
You want to say that those are significant problems you want to address, but you're not willing to address them because you're not willing to bring forth the data. You're not willing to release the data if you've even researched it to start with. And chances are good that you've got that data there, but you don't want to release it because, again, it doesn't push the narrative that you want it to push. You're right about that too, Duck Dog. Very good point.
I think that's something that's really important, and I want ATF to get us that information because that has been missing from a lot of the conversation. As we focus in on the weapons being used, I want us to make sure that we're very clear about the nature of the individuals that are carrying out these heinous acts. What is happening in our societies? What is happening to our young men? What is happening to young men in fatherless homes? What is happening to people on medication? What is happening with respect to mental health? Because if we look at the data and we see what has occurred, particularly under COVID, and we look at both suicide rates up like 10%, murder rates spiked like 40%, and I think with the use of firearms, we see that we had a serious mental health issue and the use of medication. I think that's something the ATF ought to focus on. But here's something that I want to ask about. You all had an ATF agent named Brandon Garcia who submitted a resignation letter, I think you're probably familiar with, in which he wrote, ATF has been spending a significant amount of time talking about and changing the course of this agency to focus on, quote, the guns, end quote. Agent Garcia also noted the following. Last year, headquarters spent pretty much the entire year talking about the vaccine and threatening termination for those who wouldn't get it. The deputy director threatened to prosecute agents for lying to a federal agent if we did not appropriately update our vaccination status in the system. He also noted that they were saying nothing about holding people accountable for the crimes they commit unless it supports their agenda. I think that's a question that I think we all want to know the answer to, which is, are we focusing on going after criminals carrying out bad acts, harming the American people
every
for
day,
use of guns,
every day,
as opposed to targeting law-abiding citizens for the use of having a weapon that they are entitled to be able to have under the Second Amendment?
And, Chip brings up a good point, and he doesn't, and because of his time limitations, he can't bring it up even more. Is the FBI and the Democrats, they focus in on the item used. In this case, and because they want to get rid of guns, they ignore stabbings, they ignore beatings, they ignore blunt item injuries, and they focus in on guns. And they focus in on guns that are scary looking. We all know that. All right. We all know that by the simple facts that they're going after rifles, AR-15 style rifles, all right, or AK styled rifles. They go after those, but if it's got a wooden stock, they ignore it. If it's got a plastic stock, if it's got a metal stock, if it's got polycarbide stock, or other physical features, which is appearance only, is not enhancement of the firearm. It only makes it look mean. Then they go after it. But the exact same weapon and the exact same caliber and a different stock and a different configuration is perfectly legal, and they don't go after it. That's another good point. And Eagle, you're right. It's these bureaucrats, y'all have heard me go off on this before. These bureaucrats are the ones that make laws, and we'll see that here in another video. That these guys make rules that have the effect of laws on a whim. On a whim. And the whim usually follows the direction of the Democratic Party. Because what it is they're making rules and regulations that take away our rights or limit our rights. And we know which party is more active right now on limiting our rights. I'm not saying the Republicans never do it. They just do it a hell of a lot less times and for different reasons.
We are indeed focusing on taking violent criminals and trigger pullers out of our community. Of course, working with state and local law enforcement, right? Every day. And you know that from being a PSN prosecutor. I was a PSN prosecutor also. Those are very important. And with respect to the causes of these acts, I think it is correct. There are numerous causes. ATF is not responsible for addressing them. Of course, Congress, you look at the whole field of play as to what.
You say you're not responsible for addressing them, but you're the one that supplies the data. You're the one that makes the rules. So right now you're lying. You're lying through your ass. And we know it. And you know it. Because you're the ones, the ATF is one that makes the rules on what is and isn't legal. Congress doesn't make the rules. ATF does. You unelected SOBs are the ones that sit there and make the rules.
Drives violent
But does the director agree that it would be a very important thing for us as Congress and for ATF to focus on the mental state and the medicines being used by the perpetrators of these crimes?
I think certainly that public policymakers ought to focus on that.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm going to run out of time. One other, because I got limited time. One other question with respect to the issue we're dealing here with the pistol braces. We know for sure that the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit has overwhelmingly ruled that ATF overstepped its authority when it published the final rule that classified bump stocks as machine guns. Now, to make sure that it's very clear that I'm an equal opportunity basher of tyranny, the Trump administration issued that bump stock rule, and they were wrong to do it.
And again, it wasn't did it happen under the Trump administration? Yes. Did the Trump administration push for that rule? No. The ATF made that rule themselves at the insistence of the Democratic Party, at the loud voices coming out of the Democratic Party, not out of the Republican Party, out of the Democratic Party. All right. I understand why Roy is, said that. Because he's covering his own ass here politically, saying, yeah, I'm bashing what happened. He's holding Trump accountable for what happened during his administration, which is proper. The buck stops there. But in all reality, we know that it's the ATF that's making these stupid ass rules.
Do it. They shouldn't have done it. They did it. The Fifth Circuit struck it down. The fact is, what we know about this rule, the pistol brace rule, is that it is the exact same overstepping of power. And that I think the director ought to respond to that question in just 1 minute. But I want to ask one question pretty quick right here as I wrap up. Do you believe that Americans have an individual right to bear arms?
The Supreme.
All right. I stop this here at that point. It's not do you believe, and this is where I think there's a problem here. I don't give a shit what they believe. What they believe does not matter. It's what does the Constitution say? what is black and white in the Constitution? That is what matters the most. Remember, the Democrats are using a very finite sentence, 3 or 4 words sentence in the Constitution to push for their direct control over elections and how elections are handled. All right, the Democrats tried to use that. All right. And it's a sentence that is not used very often. I'll have to pull it up because I don't remember exactly how it's worded, and I don't want to misquote the Constitution here. Okay. But the general effect of this is that Congress can take over elections with the exception of setting the place. All right. So it's, and the Democrats tried doing that here 2 years ago. The Constitution is quite clear here about the Second Amendment. I don't care what the hell this guy believes. His belief has nothing to do with what's in the Constitution.
Have an individual right to bear arms.
The Supreme Court has said that. So yes, that the SupremeUrt has said in the Heller decision and then in the Bruin decision that the
That it
Second
is an
Amendment,
individual right
the
to bear
Second
arms.
Amendment gives the individual right.
He's not saying what he believes, though. He's saying, well, the court said this. He's not saying what he believes. He's saying what he's quoting back court rulings. So he's not answering the question. He's not answering the question. What is your belief? Not what the courts have said. What is your belief?
Right to keep and bear arms.
And so what I would just suggest to the director is that when we know the Fifth Circuit has slapped down a regulatory overreach with respect to bump stocks under a Republican president, and now we have a effort here under pistol braces, which is looking backwards to take a piece of plastic, as my friend from Kentucky said, to add to a weapon, and to say to someone who had a lawful product for the entire time they've had it, to now say that it is unlawful. Would the director agree that that is something that the Fifth Circuit is very well going to look at and say that is an overstep of the executive branch over legislative authority? I yield back.
You may answer the question.
As with the bump stock case, it is in litigation. Different circuits have come out different ways on that, and I think there's a petition for certiorari before the Supreme Court. ATF's position on that, I mean, the department's position is laid out in hundreds of pages of briefs. The first ruling, which actually came out of a district court in the Fifth Circuit on the stabilizing base rule, found that it lived within the statute and was lawful under the APA, at least as a preliminary injunction matter.
But the Fifth Circuit has held that it has said that it is
The courts,
violative.
again,
The gentleman yields.
All right. Again, though, weasel words here. The guy did not answer the question. And Chip Roy did not push him. Now, Mac Daddy, I'm kind of curious as to why you don't like Chip Roy. At least when it comes to the Second Amendment and other issues, he has seemed to be pretty solid on them. So I'm kind of curious as to why you don't like him. And Eagle, you're exactly right. Their actions and show that they don't believe in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, and that they're more than willing to make up things, extrapolate stuff versus going by a reading of it. So, Mac Dag, I'd like to know why you don't like him. That would be educate me. Is there a reason why? Because like I said, when I've seen of him in these hearings and everything else, he always seems to be quite solid. I don't remember seeing anything where I would have a problem with what he says. When DeSantis was testifying on the Disney being protected by the Biden administration. Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that at all. I'm going to be honest. Okay. Okay. Now, Dietrich, he got pretty well beat up. Now, these are all from the 26th. This hearing's from the 26th, and he got pretty well beat up that day. And again, Matt Gaetz, as a person, I don't like him, but he's on the right side of a lot of times. I just don't like him as a person. But that's okay. I don't have to like him for him to be doing the right thing.
How many guns has the ATF lost?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Is it a difficult question to understand?
Well, I don't know if you're referring to any particular incident or time.
How many
period.
instances should we be looking at where you've lost guns?
So if what you're referring to is what happened at the National Destruction Branch, no guns were lost. They were stolen by an individual who's now in prison,
Right.
who was
right,
not an
but-
ATF employee.
But there were recommendations made on what you should do so that you don't become the victim of the theft. And the Inspector General saying you're not following them. I'm quoting directly from the Inspector General's report. Thousands of firearms parts, and ammunition had been stolen from the ATF. So you gave testimony that the brave ATF agents are the ones showing up at 2 a.m. after a burglary. But it seems as though in this case, you were the one burglarized. Why have you not followed the recommendations of the Office of Inspector General so that you aren't the mark?
Again, I want to say that it is brave women men and women of ATF who do this. That's not a
I know
cliche,
what they're
that's a
doing. I know what they're
reality
doing.
every
They're getting
day.
robbed on one hand, so you can't keep a hold of the guns you're supposed to have. But then you do keep a hold of a bunch of stuff you're not supposed to have a hold of. The GAO report, firearms data, ATF did not always comply with the Appropriations Act restriction and should better adhere to its policies. As a result of breaking the law, didn't you guys have to go and delete like 250,000 records that you illegally kept?
Again, with respect to both the Inspector General reports that you're talking
Nope,
about.
one's Inspector General, one's GAO.
Well,
Very
the Inspector General report, ATF, that happened several years ago, more than that.
2022
And
is the
ATF has,
date of
the
the
report
report.
came out, but the theft, and
Yeah.
ATF has implemented numerous different safety measures with respect to the National Destructive Branch.
Well, I mean,
in order
I'm reading to you
safeguard-
from the report from last year, Mr. Director. We found that the NDB staff does not currently in 2022, adhere to established operating procedures in place to mitigate risk of firearms being lost and stolen. So I guess that shows an ATF that is not functioning correctly and is not responding to the problems you create. You keep records you're not supposed to. It was 250,000 of them you had to delete, right?
I don't believe that is.
Was it over 200,000 that you had to delete?
So what was happening was.
I just want to know the number of records you had to delete that were not being lawfully maintained.
There were records that had not actually been searched, but my understanding
Hundreds of
is were
thousands of them.
searchable.
And so that's what you guys do. You keep what you shouldn't keep. You lose what you're not supposed to lose. But how do you treat regular Americans? I got this letter from someone in my district, a firearms dealer. I have been a firearms dealer for 46 years. For 46 years, I've had a good relationship with law enforcement. Then came the ATF's zero tolerance policy. 2 years ago, while in the process of selling a firearm to a customer, I completed their background check using Florida's FDLE firearm purchasing program. The background check was uneventful, and FDLE rendered an approval number. Some months later, during an ATF audit, I was told the background check was now a non-approval. Even though FDLE made the error, it was on my paperwork, so ATF deemed it a willful error. After completing close to 50,000 background checks over 46 years, why would I willfully ignore this background check? The answer is simple. I did not, but the ATF has revoked my license, ended my career, and my livelihood. So I guess the question is, why should you be able to destroy the life of one of my constituents over a technicality where they weren't even at fault, when you all lose thousands of guns and illegally keep hundreds of thousands of records?
Respectfully, Congress has given us the authority to inspect and make sure that firearms dealers, the vast majority by the which are compliant, they are our first line of defense in dealing with straw purchases.
This guy isn't your first line of defense anymore. He's fired.
A very small minority, those dealers, after due process, have been
A small
determined-
minority, ATF, enforcer of gun laws, lost thousands of firearm parts to thieves. New data shows ATF gun store restrictions at the highest rate in 16 years. Mr. Director, the definition of hypocrisy is when you can't live up to your own standard. So you have imposed a zero tolerance policy that is resulting in the highest rate of revocations in 16 years, and you wouldn't be able to meet your own zero tolerance policy because you lose stuff you're supposed to keep, and then you keep stuff that it's illegal to keep. And by the way, I am one of those MAGA Republicans that would defund your salary, your agency, and I think all these good things that you say exist could happen with those folks at the local and state level, and this is a terrible abuse of.
When the ATF, when this government screws up, like what happened here, Florida government screwed up. They gave a clear record to a guy on a background check. The ATF wouldn't accept it that the government screwed up. The guy's got the record showing it come back clear. But no, it's not a government screw up. It's your screw up. You should have known that that record was screwed up. Exactly. Oh, yeah, you're right. The brave ATF agents that ran the guns to the cartels so that they could be used and as an excuse to ban our guns. Now, I've got little to no use to the ATF anymore. I really do. I've got little to no use for them. What time is it getting to be here? Not too. I'm going to probably have to cut today a little bit short because I've got to start an infusion. And I was supposed to start a little bit ago, but I decided to do the stream first. But I do have to stab myself full of needles here pretty soon. 2010, Democratic Party involved in the company, and Disney tried to monopolize the animation company. Yeah, Sean, I'm going to have to disagree with you in a fashion. All right. The ATF, when they were first started, they were the revenuers. They were the ones making certain the taxes were being paid on alcohol and tobacco. That was their primary job. Making certain that, alcohol and tobacco were being properly grown and taxed. Now, whether or not these items should be taxed, that's a different story. Or how they're taxed or the taxing process, that's all a complete different story that I'm willing to argue anytime because, while there is commercially made moonshine, quote unquote, there's still enough people out there doing their own home brews and trying to, do it as a side hustle and selling them. So where they screwed up here, when they were given the authority by Congress to make their own rules that have the effect of law, that's where the major screw up was. These agencies should never have authority to make their own laws, to make up rules without going through Congress first. Every bill, every law that they want to make should be submitted to Congress and voted on. Have hearings on it. And if it's a good bill, if it's a good law, it'll go through. But if it's a bad bill, if it's a bad law, if it's a bad rule, it will die. We should not have to take these agencies to court to overturn bad rules that are unconstitutional. Every one of those rules that these agencies come up with should have to go through Congress and not voted on en banc, not voted on as a group. Each individual one voted on individually. And that should be the procedure. One, it would cut down on the number of rules. It'd cut down on a number of them right away. That'd be the first thing it would do. Cut down on the number of rules that get passed through. The next thing it would do, though, for all of us, is ones that were there would have been made into law legally per the Constitution. Exactly, Badger. That would involve them doing their job and not living their fancy lifestyle and having all their parties that they go to. That would actually make them working and earning their paychecks. Now, there's a few up there that earn their paychecks, but there's a lot of them up there that aren't. Let's see here. No, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Let's see here. I got one more here from about the ATF and Dietrich there. We'll cover this video, and then this will be the last one for the day. Because I don't want to get into the other two cases right now because I'll take me way past the time that I've got available to me.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director, in 2012, John Spencer, Chief of Firearms Technology Branch, wrote a letter to Alex Bosco, inventor of stabilizing brace. We talked about this letter already. He said, based on our evaluation, FTB finds that the submitted firearm brace, when attached to a firearm, does not convert that weapon to be fired from the shoulder and would not alter the classification of a pistol or other firearm. You're aware of this letter?
I am aware of the letter, yes.
Did Congress pass, between this letter being issued to Mr. Bosco and the production and distribution of 10 to 40 million of these braces and the implementation of your rule, did Congress pass a law? What changed?
Congress did not pass a law, but something did change. What changed is that item that was submitted was not produced and was not the item that was marketed. And Mr. Bosco, I think before this committee, said that people were using stabilizing braces in ways that he hadn't anticipated.
Okay.
All right. So, Mr. Bosco, this is the guy that invented the stabilizing brace for pistols. So that pistol could be shot by individuals who can't shoot two-handed because they may be missing a hand. They may be missing their left arm or right arm. And this allows them to stabilize that pistol to shoot. Now you see in the movies people shooting one-handed all the time. Well, if you're going to miss, you're going to miss with that because the recoil of that pistol. And I'm going to tell you, even though I shoot a low recoil Glock, that recoil is enough for your second, third, and follow-on shots to miss your target, or require the time between and betwixt to, too much time between and betwixt your shots. Whereas if you're shooting two-handed, that reduces the recoil and reduces the time needed to reacquire your target. Well, the stabilizing brace did the same thing for a one-handed shooter. And a lot of people used it exactly as it was designed to do, because he designed this for a friend of his who was a war veteran who'd lost use of one of his hands. Now, because somebody misuses something should not make that item illegal. If so, bleach would be illegal. Fertilizer would be illegal. Most chemicals that you buy in the grocery store would be illegal because all of them have been misused. There's damn few neckties would be illegal because they've been misused. White t-shirts would be illegal because they've been misused. I'd be very difficult for you to name me a product in a grocery store or in any store that cannot be misused. Do we turn around and make those items illegal because somebody's misused them? Again, you don't punish people who buy a product who use it correctly. You punish the people who use the product incorrectly. You don't require, this is why I'm against background checks. All right. I should not have to prove that I'm not a criminal in order to carry a firearm. I should not have to have proof on me to show a cop, and every cop that just happens to see my firearm, that I'm qualified or authorized to carry that firearm. Yeah, white Ford Broncos. Exactly, Eagle. Makes them more accurate. When you have to get permission from the government to use something that is an everyday common, that should be an everyday common use, then something is wrong. Until you misuse that item, you should be allowed to own it. You should be allowed to buy it. You should be allowed to use it. And if you use it incorrectly and causes harm to someone, then you get charged. Not for having the item, but for misusing the item, for causing damage with the item. All right? But that is just the opposite of what the ATF is doing here. The ATF has taken an item that was approved and then the original design improved upon. Then some people start using it according to the FBI incorrectly, according to the ATF incorrectly. So now they want to go back and make them all illegal. Making it illegal to use them unless you get special permission from them to use it and show that you're only going to use it correctly. You should not have to get special permission.
Let me challenge that assertion. So you say that the brace changed, and so you had to implement this rule. Well, I've got here the actual original brace that this letter was responsive to. Are you telling me that this brace is exempt from your rule?
What I'm saying is that if people have products that are not
Is
designed
this
and-
brace
and
exempt from your rule?
I can't sit here and classify.
This
but if
is the
it's
brace you
submitted, we
wrote the
will give
letter
it a
to.
classification, and if it's not ruled to be attached as a short-barreled rifle, it will not be subject to the rule.
Would you please quit telling this committee that the brace has changed and that's why you did the rule, when in fact, you're not exempting the same brace that you gave this letter to?
If the brace is submitted, we'll classify it.
Would you
with a
submit,
firearm.
do you still have the same agreement that this brace that the ATF agreed to in 2012 should not be under the jurisdiction of your rule?
If that brace is submitted with a firearm, we
You get that? Listen to this. Listen to this. The brace itself was deemed legal in 2012, 10 years ago. Listen to this.
Of your rule?
If that brace is submitted with a firearm, we will examine and classify it. If it doesn't
Okay,
qualify.
reclaiming my time.
You have to take a picture, fill out paperwork, send it to the ATF, and then they will individually approve you with that particular brace as being legal. You can't give that brace to somebody else to use, because then they don't have permission to use it. How is this not an overreach by the ATF? How is this not deemed unconstitutional? This is the stuff, the actions that turned people against the government. Stupidity like this is what turns people against the government. And, me speaking out against this, I become an enemy of the government. Because of what I've said here today, I could be deemed as an enemy of the government. I'm not an enemy of the government. I'm an enemy of the stupidity and the overreach by people like this who don't understand and live by the Constitution, but are in power.
Because it's pretty obvious you're misleading people here when you say that the braces changed, because your rule affects the braces that didn't change. How many days have passed? How many days do people have to comply with this rule?
So they can always comply, but the initial period.
Before they're felons?
But the initial period, I believe, ends at the end of May.
Okay.
But people
End of
are.
May, and it was 120 days, is that correct?
People are only felons if they intentionally.
Is it 120
violate
days?
The law. I believe it's 120 days from the
So
date
we've
of
got
public-
36 days left of the 120-day grace period. Can you tell us here today how many people have complied by registering this product?
I am not sure of the exact number. I can check though and get back to you.
Now, see, remember, you had to send a picture of your firearm with this. So you're not only registering the product, you're registering your firearm. You're letting the ATF know you have that gun because you're having to send a picture of it attached to your firearm. So now the ATF has got a registration of your gun. Eagle, you're probably exactly right. They got the algorithms there to, analyze what people say. So I'm sure my name is up there.
There are people who are making applications. There also can be detachment. So in other words, we don't count. That's not for us to regulate. If somebody we wrote the rule to make it easy to comply with. If somebody just at their home.
We wrote the rule to make it easy to comply with. Yeah. Comply with this rule as we wrote with it, or you become a felon and get sent to prison for 10 years. You go to jail for a decade if you don't write this rule, follow this rule as easy as we made it to follow.
Attaches the weapon from the brace and keeps them apart. They do not have to register anything. They can keep the brace. They can keep the business end of the gun.
Okay, that's a great clarification. So you're not going to do some kind of constructive prosecution where you say, oh, well, you had this and you had that and you intended to
They're
connect them?
keeping the, I mean. if
They
they're
can just keep them
attaching
separately?
as we
Keep them
approach
separately.
But it's-
You can own it, you just can't use it. It's the minute you attach it is when you become a felon. So you can own it all day long, you just can't use it.
Okay,
And-
because
and-
that's not clear in your rules. What is the punishment if somebody is convicted as a felon under having this piece of plastic?
If people are convicted of not following the Gun Control Act, it's a serious felony conviction, but
Is it
that
10
requires
years?
intent.
Can you just give me the number? Is it 10 years?
I believe it's a statutory maximum of 10 years.
10 years for owning a piece of plastic that you were told was legal and that you owned for a decade and that millions of people did? This is what offends the sensibilities of Americans, whether they own these or not. Do these make the gun fire more rapidly?
The stabilizing.
Do these increase the muzzle velocity?
The stabilizing.
Do these allow you're not answering any of the questions. Do these allow the firearm to carry more bullets?
The stabilizing braces allow, if they're the kind that count, allow the firearm to be shouldered.
Let me ask
in a
you
way
this.
that Congress
I'm glad you
determined
brought
makes it-
that up. So this is a stabilizing brace here. Here's a pistol without a stabilizing brace. Does the buffer tube, could that be shouldered?
Again, that would have to be submitted to the firearms experts at ATF, and we could classify it.
Do you
which
think
we
you
will
have the
do.
authority to reclassify this pistol as a short barreled rifle simply because it has a buffer tube?
Again, the rule is aimed at clarifying, and there are specific factors that are set forth in the rule.
Do you think you have the authority to reclassify the firearm above because it can be shouldered?
Again, for me to sit here and try to do a class.
Tap dancing son of a gun. I mean, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there, of people shouldering. I'm using shouldering in quotations. That gun with the buffer tube. You know, people have used 3D makers, those 3D machines to make a pad to go on the end of that buffering tube, so to shoulder it. So, you know, people have shouldered that buffering tube.
Classification that firearms experts who've worked for decades do would not be appropriate, but we will give classifications. And if things don't qualify under the rule, then they don't qualify. And nobody, the piece of plastic in and of itself is absolutely
I
not
submit
covered
you
by
don't
the
have
rule.
that authority and you don't have the authority to do what you did. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Next,
Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. This is why I hate the alphabet agencies. You're absolutely right, Badger. You would think the person who's in charge of the ATF would be an expert when their primary concern for the past decade has been the banning of firearms and restricting firearms. You think that they would be an expert on the things that they're trying to do. But no, he's a bureaucrat. He's an expert at bureaucracies and double talk and triple talk and saying things that make no damn sense and not answering questions. But that's the way these things go. Oh yeah, when they under the bump stock ruling. Hell, you know, belt loops. Under belt loops. Hey, Cook, how's it going? Belt loops were used to, you know, quote unquote bump stocks. So, yeah. Come on, you know. You know, they're going after bidirectional triggers too. They're going after bidirectional triggers because they feel that those make guns fire too fast. Now, personally, I don't have a use for a bidirectional trigger. But if somebody wants a bidirectional trigger, I don't care. If you want to own a bidirectional trigger, that's fine. What are they going to come after laser pointers on being mounted to guns next? Because that makes them more accurate, having a laser pointer on there. Especially the green ones, because the green ones can be seen better during the day than the red ones can. The ATF hurts us, but they're there. So anyway, ladies and gents, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. Let's see, today is Thursday, so tomorrow's the fun day. I've got a half a dozen of things up here on my screen to talk about. That's why I made a beef stew day, but we ended up spending all the time on these two items. Yeah, Dave, I've seen them flashlights, and I've been thinking about looking into getting one of those. But they just, I can just think of better things to spend my money on. So, but everybody, please have a good day. We'll be back tomorrow with the Friday Fun Day. Have a good one. Be with the ones you love and love the ones that you're with. And we'll see you tomorrow.